hear and be inspired from these people. Have my new favorite speaker just came off the stage with such an amazing insight into the new utopian world and how we can move from dystopian into utopian with everything that's happening in the world right now, with reflecting back on Vedas and Kali Yugas to Sat Yuga, and so many amazing stories that you did, from being on a trading floor, doing the amazing things back in 30 years ago, to consulting some of the biggest corporations and companies at the moment in the world, bringing them into the more conscious approach, into more sustainable approach, using spiral dynamics. Oh my gosh, you compiled just all of it. I'm just so pleased and stoked to have you here. Please introduce yourselves and tell us more about what you do from your angle.
So I teach meditation predominantly based around Vedic meditation. And from that being the limb of the tree, I have many trunks that grow off that limb, which is running retreats, doing corporate speaking and corporate trainings, keynote presentations. And I do a lot of mentoring for conscious leaders, helping conscious leaders build out sustainable businesses that nourish them to enable them to be in that space and be supported through their businesses in that value exchange that they bring to the world. So that's a big area that I really enjoy working with as well.
Amazing. And then you did amazing metaphor of uses parallel dynamics, but in kind of society way, in where the move or the
Mm.
consciousness of our society is, and how we can potentially transition into the other
Yeah.
more sustainable, impactful states and colors.
Yeah. So where we see humanity, and we're in multiple tiers or layers simultaneously. So we've got some people still very much in the red zone, which is very narcissistic and egocentric, and their whole world revolves around them. And then we've got people who are very conformist that are just really afraid to be seen, and they kind of stay in a very sort of mediocre type of existence because it's just too hard or too uncomfortable to step out and do something that's individualized for themselves. And then we've got the individualists that go out and just pursue their own success, and that's in the orange zone. And they're just very much achievers. And most people that are successful or leaders in things like politics or business are pretty much in that orange zone and doing that for their company, for their people, for themselves. But really, ultimately, it's still driven by them, for them. And then we've got people being really charged by the way people are going about in that overachieving with reckless abandon. And that pushes people up into the green zone where we get a lot of activists who are pointing fingers at the orange people saying, hey, listen, you can't keep
Mm,
doing things the way you're doing it. And so that creates a lot of conflict. And we've got a lot of conflict in the planet right now where
mhm.
people are very antagonized by the way people have been doing things and people trying to stop them doing things the way they're doing them. And that's where we've got a lot of division in the world right now. And it's just part of our evolution. It's uncomfortable, but we do have to go through this phase. And then we get into that awaken phase where we get into teal. And that's where we're seeing a lot of people just in the last 5 years really going into plant medicine, breath work, meditation, yoga, qigong, tai chi, and this is really exciting times because we're seeing a really big uplift in the awakening of the planet right now. And of course, it's still not the norm, but the more we see people going into that space, then the more normalized that will become. And then finally, we'll get into coral, which is conscious leadership, and that's where the teal people
Mhm.
are leading the way for the masses and bringing people all up the spiral through their work. And some of those people in coral are working with people in the red zone, some of people in coral working with people in the yellow zone, and a lot of people, Cara, who hopefully will be on after this call, working with people in the orange zone. And like myself, I love working with a lot of people in that orange zone, helping them to become more conscious while they're still in the orange zone. They don't have to leave the orange zone.
Mhm.
They can integrate orange with coral.
And you also predominantly work with the corporates that are maybe in the zones of where they're activists, or they're red, or even other on the higher levels, so you can bring them up in an ecosystem,
Yeah.
collaborating with these. If you, let's say, work with Coca-Cola, for example, or big other companies.
So the important thing about spiral dynamics and altitudes development is knowing where you're at in the spiral is critical.
Mhm.
And sometimes you can actually be in different layers depending on your state of mind that day. But knowing where you're at, and I have to really consciously myself remind myself I'm in coral and I need to really own, live, and breathe coral. And then working out who is our audience. And we can't just assume that everyone's in the same zone as you. So if I'm working with, say, an Amazon
Hmm.
or a Boston Consulting Group, I have to understand that I might be in Coral, but my language and my information flow
Has to come
has to
through the
come
red or through their level.
for their
Right.
level,
Yeah.
whatever. So if I'm working with someone that's dealing with deep trauma and
Hmm.
in a very extreme state of stress, they're probably in the red zone. So again,
Hmm.
you're using a different approach, different techniques, different language,
Hmm.
understanding who your audience is and how you're communicating to them.
Beautiful. And you also been doing some amazing filmmaking and producing some amazing videos, super inspiring. One of which is called Portal.
The portal, yeah.
All right. So where can you people watch that, and maybe can you give us a little bit of a trailer of that? That's
Yeah. So the portal explores really, it sort of represents my journey, which is that I went through crisis, and crisis catapulted me through transformation. And we look at the lens of crisis in humanity, and we look at it through 6 individualized stories that have all had personal crisis, but we also overlay that on a macro level of humanity's impending crisis, speaking with 3 futurists. And we tie in the macro and the micro that crisis is a catapult, an opportunity for exponential levels of growth.
mm-hmm.
And we don't want to see crisis as something that's happening to us and we're a victim of it. It's an opportunity for us and a purpose for us to grow through that crisis. And then we look at how people have evolved using the tool of meditation that they found during the crisis time, which is what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so people can watch that for free on the website entertheportal.com. And I believe it's also in Gaia as well.
A beautiful Gaia network. Okay, so lastly, I'm just super inspired by your talk, by the way, and I'm all about Vedas, and I've been
Mm.
studying Hinduism and Buddhism for many, many years, and knowing the weird transition of the from Kali Yuga into Sat Yuga, and we're also on the verge where technology, AI, and this expansion of innovation is happening to the uncertainty of our humanity and the planet we are living on. So we're transitioning to from dystopia to utopia somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
right? But what is your question to our viewers and our audience that they should ask themselves, maybe to keep them inspired, to keep them more sane and present? Or what are
Mm.
the most important questions that you would ask them?
I finished the keynote with a poignant question that I was asked once. And that was where Daniel Schmachtenberger from our film asked me to share with my audiences to have some critical thinking around the exploration of what in our mind does an enlightened planet look like. And what I love about this question is that it comes back to a question, or not a question, a quote from Bob Proctor, where he says, if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. So if we want to hold or manifest or create an enlightened planet, we have to start with the idea of what that looks like first.
Mhm.
We can't design a building unless we know what the design of the building
Mhm.
looks like. We can't build the building unless we know what the design looks like. And so we need to start contemplating in each and every one of our minds, what does an enlightened planet look like?
Mhm.
And the second part to that question would be, what do you look like as an enlightened person? How do you speak? How do you act? How do you think? What are the things that you do with your life? What do you create in your life? And this gives us a guidance system, a way to move forward and start to move in a particular direction that we might not have thought about moving towards in the previous days of our lives. So that's something I would leave with everyone to start thinking about, just simply in the morning when you wake up. That's a really good question.
Mhm.
What does an enlightened planet look like?
Mm. Wow, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for work that you do. Thank you for coming to I'm Creation Summit or podcast to share with our global audience through Startup Grind Networks and around the world. Um, and lastly, where can people find you personally? Are there any Instagram, social media channels or website that your
I'm a big fan
personal?
of Instagram. I find it's really good for messaging and connecting with people. There's something quite personal about Instagram
Right.
for some reason. I'm not sure why. So Instagram is just Tom Cronin, Cronin. And my website is the same, tomcronin.com. They're probably the 2 best places to find me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tom. keep shining the light in the dark places.
Thank you. I appreciate your time
Thank
and thanks
you.
for sharing space with me. Thank you.